Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I am driving a 1993 Honda Acty. Behind me is a 0.6 liter or 660cc 3-cylinder engine, and down below is a 5-speed manual transmission.
This video is sponsored by CarMarshal.com. If you'd like to support the channel, click the link down in the description below. CarMarshal.com advertises for over 100,000 vehicles across the US.
Now before we get started, this is my 300th video review, so thank you so much, David, for letting me take the truck out for my 300th. This is absolutely awesome, and this is such a little smile machine. But like I said, behind me is a 0.6 liter or 660cc 3-cylinder engine. Now that is very crucial to the truck because that's what actually makes it a K truck. Or is it Key or K? I'm gonna say K throughout the video. It's spelled K-E-I. There's some discrepancy on how you pronounce it here in America. But basically what a K vehicle is, in Japan, you get a tax break if your vehicle is under a certain displacement and under a certain length, width, and height. So basically, because of the crowding issue in Japan, they give you a tax break if you drive a very, very small vehicle. And so that spawned a K vehicle segment. You know, they've been making K vehicles for a very long time. Mazda even made one back in the 60s that I have video of. Maybe one day I'll be able to drive one. And I've actually reviewed another one here on the channel, actually another Honda, which was a Honda Beat. And so getting back to it, that's why this truck is so small, and that's why it has such a small engine. Now, like I said, paired to it is a 5-speed manual transmission that is really, really light. It has such a light clutch and a decent throw. It's not a super long throw, and it clicks into place pretty decently. You get used to shifting, you know, pretty early on, but the weird thing is the pedals. Just by looking at them here in the video, you'll notice that the pedals look just very different. They're hinged very oddly, and they just, overall, they just feel weird. That being said, the overall driving experience is very, very weird, and I'm not just saying that because it's right-hand drive. Of course, that does contribute to it, but also, I'm very, very tight in here. My feet, I've been driving for 4 minutes, already hurt because it's just hinged so odd. And as you'll notice from looking at the exterior, the cab sits over the front wheels. So actually, when I open up the door and look down, I see the front wheels of the truck. I'm actually over them. I'm over the front axle. And so turning is very different, and just overall bumps feel very different because you're so used to feeling the front axle, and then the rear axle go over the bump. That's not the case here. You're kind of the first line of defense when it comes to hitting a bump. You feel it first. And so it's a very odd sensation driving this thing. But last but not least, it is 4-wheel drive. It's all the time 4-wheel drive. But according to the owner, David, you can apparently take a bolt out and make it rear-wheel drive if you really want to, but this thing already gets 35 to 40 miles to the gallon, so there's no real point, and it's not like you're really going to tandem drift with the homeboys in a Honda Acty. So let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I actually just have one giant gauge, which is the speedometer. Now, of course, it is in kilometers. That's not weird, but what is weird is that it doesn't have a tachometer, but Honda thought of this. So they put what gear you probably should be in at what point. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Of course, this is a 5-speed, so gear 4 and 5, you're kind of on your own. But it actually says, hey, you should probably be in this gear at this point, which is actually really handy for a vehicle that doesn't have a tachometer. It actually makes a lot of sense and makes everything really easy. To the left, I do have my coolant, and on the right, I do have my fuel. Very, very basic there. On the steering wheel, I have my horn buttons, as well as it says real-time 4-wheel drive with the Honda logo, which is just really, really cool to see. To the left, I do have two center vents, and then my climate controls. Of course, very bare bones basic here. It does not actually have air conditioning. It looks like it does. It does not. One thing about the climate controls is, holy crap, does the heat work? I mean, I might start sweating here in a second. I have to keep turning it off. And then, of course, an aftermarket radio, because every radio from the 90s was absolute trash, and you got to switch that out. Then I do have a 12-volt outlet and a little coin holder, and then we come to the center console with the shifter. Of course, like I said, shifter feels pretty good, and it looks very much like how you would think it would look. This is very much a utility vehicle, and we'll talk about that when we talk more about the looks. The seats actually aren't too bad. They're just sort of built into the back. They don't have a ton of bolstering, but I'm not uncomfortable. You can even tell I'm driving on a pretty rough road right now. I don't know what's with me and picking rough roads today, but honestly, the seats are the least of my worries when it comes to the interior. My right leg is up against the door card, getting smashed by the window crank as it sits on the gas pedal. It's a whole mess over there, but actually the seats are not bad. The seats do fold up, and actually under the passenger seat is where you'll find your washer fluid. So of course we don't have a back seat, so let's talk about the exterior, and then we'll get into some quirks with that, because it is quite weird. So I think obviously it looks very much like a truck, and that is honestly to be expected. I mean, this is a utility vehicle. In Japan, these are not special at all. You'll find them for a dime a dozen over there, because these are built to be trucks used to haul things, used for a business, for a farmer, whoever it may be. This is built to be used, abused, and thrown away. And so it's funny because us Americans over here, we see one of these and absolutely freak out, but I'm sure if you go to Japan, you'll see probably about 800 of them your first day there. But the cool thing about the bed, first of all, that's where the engine compartment actually is. That square in the middle, that's the engine compartment, which is pretty neat. But also, if you have a bunch of stuff in the back and have to service the engine, you gotta take it all out. But second of all, these sides of the bed actually come down. They actually fold down, and you can make this into a flatbed, which I think is really, really neat and makes the car, or the vehicle, the truck, so usable, as this guy in a Tiburon is staring at me. And so, as David has pointed out to me, there's some other interesting things. The battery is on the left side. That's not too crazy. The Mazda Ripu in the 70s had this same sort of setup, but the oil dipstick is in the rear wheel well. To put oil in is right behind the rear wheel well. It's very compact, but it all kind of makes sense. It's all right there, and as David has told me, of course, I personally have never worked on this, but he's done some work to it. You know, he's maintained it and everything. He said it's very, very easy to work on. Once you figure out where everything is, it's all easily accessible, and that's because these were used by farmers. These were used by businesses. With all of that being said, I've wanted to talk about this with JDM cars for a while, but I didn't really find the right word until recently. I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here. I recently learned of a word that is anemoia. I'll put it up on the screen. Anemoia. Anemoia is the idea of false nostalgia. Nostalgia for something that you didn't experience. And there's a great video on YouTube. I highly recommend looking it up. And the video talks about, you know, in the 1920s when you see, you know, all the fast, you know, black and white movies, and you're like, oh, I wish for that time, even though you weren't existing then. But for me, it's with JDM cars. Driving this just makes me think of the good old days when things were simple. And this is just a tiny little honest pickup truck. It's here to do a good day's work and go home. And it makes me nostalgia of Japan in the 90s. You know, what it was like, where you could have gone to a couple different showrooms and on the showroom floor see an FD RX-7, an NSX, an Evo 5, an R32 GTR. What was that like? You could have just gone around and seen these icons. I long for the days of 90s Japan, where it was just this bustling metropolis of innovation and speed and amazing, amazing cars like this. This was brand new in the 90s, and it was something so cutting edge and awesome and useful. Except I was born in 97, 4 years after this came out. I've never been to Japan. And actually, in the 90s, Japan went through something called the Lost Decade, where inflation absolutely took over, and the whole country was kind of just in a really weird spot financially and culturally. And so really what I'm lusting after, those good old days, don't really exist. I'm imagining a golden era of Japan that, besides the vehicles, wasn't really real. But putting my rose-colored glasses back on, driving something like this makes me feel like it was real. And you know what? Like a 6-year-old in Santa Claus, just let me believe. Just let me have that image in my mind. because honestly, it's probably a lot better than the real image. That's how I feel about this truck. It's just an honest little workhorse. And here in America, you can't really find that anymore. I mean, all of the trucks, first of all of our trucks are monstrously larger. But they also now, and even in the 90s, had a lot more features than this. A lot of trucks in the 90s had air conditioning. A lot of trucks in the 90s had leather. My old Dodge Ram had both. And so features are great. The more and more features you add, the less honest the vehicle becomes. That's why I love this truck. That's why I love my RX-7. No power steering, no power windows, no AC. Just me and that little Wankel rotary. And this, no power steering, no AC, just me and a little 0.6 liter. Yeah! I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I want to thank David so much for letting me take this thing out. This is absolutely so flippin' cool. It's just so different, unique, and honest, and it's just such an honest little truck. I absolutely love it. So thank you so much, David, for allowing me to do so. And thank everyone for getting me to 300 video reviews. You know, if these things flopped, I wouldn't still make them. At least I wouldn't have made 300 of them. And so it's because of you guys that I keep doing that, and it's because of you guys that I'm able to drive things like this. So thank you everyone for 300 videos. Thank you all for 20,000 subscribers. You guys are absolutely awesome, and I can't thank you enough. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.
There goes a sight from my soul.